I request Nayak Godse and Rahul Sharma from Data Security Council of India to please take over the session.
So these 10 minutes of this particular meet always goes into just take a review in what happened in last 1 year in terms of policy ecosystem. As you know that most of this policy engagement in cyber security privacy area, we as a Data Security Council of India engage with the Government of India as a part of industry representation. And many of those initiatives of Government of India, they also rely us on some of the key inputs that they would like to see from the industry side. So definitely quite an interesting year for the policy level activities as well. Um, we had been as a Bangalore deliberating on IT/ITS services and the market potential of IT/ITS services into some other geographies, especially in European Union. And there have a lot of momentum which happened. Privacy Shield is one very important part which has emerged, but there is some context to that one. I would like Rahul to really explain about what is happening around the data transfer issues and privacy and what exactly the debate stands at this point of the global platform.
Right, thank you. To set the context, both after the Snowden revelations, we had seen a lot of flux in the privacy regime across the globe, and everybody started to think on how do they design or redesign their privacy programs and regulations to keep themselves relevant with the changing expectations around privacy of individuals, of regulators, of government. And we have seen a lot of countries who have developed privacy laws. So if we take pre-2000 and post-2000 era, we find that almost 30 new countries have implemented privacy laws. A lot of many countries like Australia and in Brazil, they have reformed their privacy laws to make them more advanced, make them more pertinent in today's age. And in some of the geographies, citizens saw this as an opportunity to sort of voice their concern on the practices around mass surveillance that were exposed across the globe. And it was the same reason that an individual called Max Schrems had challenged the decision on whether the data transfer can happen from the European geography to a country like US, given then that there were mass concerns around the surveillance that was happening. And the Irish court ruled in favor of the current model of data transfers, that is the safe harbor, which existed for almost like 15 years. But then the individual Maxims felt that this
But just
was
to
not
information for some of the people, the safe harbor is the arrangement between US and EU to make data transfer from EU to US.
Correct.
And that is a separate arrangement that has been made between the EU and US, which was in question in last year.
correct. So as Vinayak explained, so data transfer happens from EU to rest of the world. Now, rest of the world, including US, India, Australia, we do not have such stringent controls or regulatory practices in place that restrict, cross-border movement of personal information for processing. But EU has, since privacy is a fundamental right, they have a pretty strong directive that guarantees protection to individuals and gives them privacy rights and recourse mechanisms. So based on that, every country has formed their own laws. And since US is a natural partner to EU, they had to come out with some framework because US, like India, does not have a comprehensive privacy law. So these two countries worked out a mechanism called Safe Harbor, wherein the data transfer can happen from EU companies to US companies for processing. But that got invalidated after the court had raised an objection on the transfer mechanisms, and it did not satisfy the criteria on the adequacy, and it did not match the criteria for guaranteeing the privacy protection. So it ruled out the transfer, but gave a deadline to the both the sides, EU Commission as well as US, to come out with an alternative model that addresses concerns of individuals and citizens and gives more rights to EU citizens in case they feel that their data is getting violated, being used for some misuse for some other purposes. So the regulators on both sides have been trying to come up with an alternative model, and it's called Privacy Shield. They came up with the framework, but again, that got challenged by the Article 29 Working Party, now Article 29 Working Party is essentially it's a working group of the data protection authorities of different EU member states. So they made 4 observations on why it was not, adequate enough to pass the court's litmus test on data adequacy. And they feel that it will get rejected by the central court. And now the 4 recommendations have gone to Article 31 Working Party, which is essentially so all the head of the commissions are part of this, and they are looking at it very carefully. They were supposed to come up with a decision last week, but I think they will come out with a decision next week on whether this is adequate or not, and then it will go again to the court.
So in nutshell, transfer of data and opportunity along with data is critically now becoming dependent on the ability of country to protect citizens' data. So those countries which probably do not have the mature privacy regime, they will struggle in the global marketplace. So that's what exactly it is coming in, and European Union is especially trying very hard to harmonize the privacy regime in a way that they see is a strong privacy regime. And that's what we as the Indian economy also struggles in European Union, because some of you must be knowing that there is difficulty that we have been facing in European market. So in European market, overall share of Indian IT outsourcing companies is significantly less as compared to what we get in US market. And privacy has been cited as a very important reason for that one. So it also tells us the overall trade with IoT coming in, cloud coming in, and many other industrialization 4.0 kind of trend is coming in. So most of the trade will be dependent on digital flow of data. And flow of data would be crucially and critically dependent on the geography's ability to give that protection. So the global expectation of the privacy will determining the flow of the data, and hence it will determine the share of a country in the digital, in the next generation trade. So that's what it says to us, and that's what probably this particular topic talks about to us. But then from this discussion of the data transfer from the conventional IT services and BPO side, let's move to the e-commerce side, because that is also shaping up a lot of discussion happening in the e-commerce side. And at a bilateral level as well, between India, Singapore, between different countries, and from the multilateral perspective as well. So there are some regional initiative and WTO level initiatives which are also coming in. And e-commerce, transborder e-commerce is where the lot of policy and difficulties we are seeing, and security privacy do have some sense in those diplomatic discussion as well. So Rahul, can you just talk about that?
So as Vinayak mentioned that cross-border data flows and privacy are regularly becoming part of the trade matters for a nation state, because they contribute a lot to the economy. And we are seeing many dialogues, treaties, and arrangements that talk about privacy, harmonizing regimes for cross-border data flows, finding common minimum ground and arrangements on how data flows can happen, what should be the regulatory mechanism that will govern data, what should be the standards that will be followed. And related to that, so we see mention of aspects of privacy and cross-border data flows in treaties like TPP, Transatlantic Trade Partnership, TTIP, and more so in the APEC region, there is a RCEP group called Regional Cooperation Economic Partnership, which is essentially Asian countries plus Australia, Singapore, India. And so these countries are trying to harmonize their regimes to enhance data flows and give a boost to e-commerce. And since privacy is one of the important factors, because every country has a different way to govern privacy, so there is no common minimum ground on what regulations will apply and how will the information be protected. So that treaty, that dialogue is getting stuck at this point, and that is the main point of focus on how do we build that common minimum expectation, how do we arrive at something which allows data flows to happen without any, it becoming a regulatory or a trade barrier. So we'll see that happening in more so in coming years in different treaties.
And in both of these things, which with the EU and with other e-commerce discussion, our Department of Commerce, we work closely with them, and most of this debate discussion happens at bilateral level, multilateral level, regional level as well, and probably they will be shaping all of the policy discussion in the future. And then if you go one level up, and probably that is very important level in terms of governance of the internet, and managing and governing the governance of the internet is very important part. And we had been dealing with the Ministry of External Affairs and Department of Information Technology on that part. So there had been some little development on that part as well, which Rahul has been following with both of these ministries. I will like Rahul to talk about that.
So on internet governance, so it's a very wide subject. If you look at the terminology internet governance, that would mean governing the entire internet and all the aspects related to it. So the word itself is so heavy that it covers everything: infrastructure, your cybersecurity issues, privacy, human rights, traffic flow, everything. So there are various bodies that are involved in claiming their share of contribution to this internet governance, and one of them is ICANN, which is the Internet Corporation of Assigned Numbers and Names, and that is mainly responsible for coordinating the IANA transition, IANA functions, which are essentially your DNS, which are your domain names plus your IP addresses. And there is a body called Internet Engineering Task Force within Internet Society, ISOC, that develops rules and protocols on how information flow happens. You know, for example, your protocols like HTTP, World Wide Web, your SMTP, FTP, etc. These are all developed. These are all layer 4, layer 3 protocols developed by a body called IETF. So they work around that model. And after this Snowden revelation, since it was unilaterally controlled by a country, US, so a lot of organizations and a lot of nation states had great concerns that it should be, since it's a global commons, it's a global resource, it should be equally be distributed. And everyone should have a right, equal say in how internet governance matters are governed. And the Department of Commerce in the US, NTIA, had made a decision to let go of the whatever control it had on the IANA transition and the ICANN as body. So it went through like 2 years of process, went through a lot of deliberation and dialogues, and different nation states, civil society, private sectors being part of it. Some of the important reasons on why this transition initiated were on the grounds of unilateral control, applicability of jurisdiction, so what laws will apply in internet governance matters, who has the control and all. Now these things were left unaddressed, and we moved on to next step, trying to find out a body or a solution that can address the internet governance concern. Now the model has been proposed to the NTIA, and supposedly next week there's a meeting happening in Finland wherein this will be officially be announced, model getting accepted by the US Department of Commerce, and the work will initiate to ensure that the internet governance transition takes place to a body called ICANN, which was erstwhile a contractor to perform IANA functions, but now it will be the body that gives the IANA function contract. So the third party becomes the first party in this case. So a lot of flux happening, and some of the nation states like France and Brazil have openly raised concern. India has been a staunch supporter of multi-stakeholder model, and in the recently released India-US cyber fact sheet, India has again reaffirmed its commitment to multi-stakeholder model of internet governance. And we hope that we raise whatever concerns are still left unaddressed at the appropriate level. For example, the applicability of jurisdiction and laws, and who governs, and what is exactly the model.
Yeah.
So this is the overall context
then,
of internet governance.
In just summarization of this one is, till now, country US has a lot of strong control on the managing the affairs of the internet, which was challenged by many countries across the globe, and probably this is a first step. First, probably may not be that significant, but some significant step we achieved in terms of agreeing to, means US government agreeing to let go some of the controls from managing the affairs of the internet. So that's very remarkable development to an extent, but a lot more things to be achieved in the future. From here to another important issue which we all in IT industry deals with is cloud computing. And these cloud computing policy matters are significantly critical for IT BPO industry's prospect. Not only IT BPO industry prospect, but many of the future new innovation which will be happening in the country. So Rahul, briefly, because we don't have much time, so briefly you just touched upon the cloud computing.
I can already see the timeout sign. So on the cloud matters, DIT had come up with a policy called Meghraj. It was 3 years back. And then recently, I would say last year, they came out with a cloud accreditation framework wherein DIT is empaneling private cloud sector players if they provide that minimum baseline. And they have also set up a cloud management office which will oversee the operations. And I think the announcement on who gets accredited will be next week. Along that lines, DIT is also trying to formulate a policy to increase, to have more and more cloud services players in India. So that is one policy that is under progress. Parallelly, we also see Telecom Regulatory Authority of India has thrown a consultation paper on the subject on what are the concerns when it comes to cloud service providers and what are the issues of national security, how data flow should happen, how national security and privacy issues should be taken care of. And these issues are now being dealt by two different departments of the same ministry parallelly, and I hope there is some convergence on how this
and then we
affairs happens.
definitely are concerned about this TRAS paper because it talks about licensing or registration of the cloud service provider, which probably is very difficult proposition from perspective of IT BPO industry and from the product industry as well. So that is very concern point, and we will be definitely working on that. And then some of you must be knowing that we did host ISO SC27 working group meeting in the Jaipur last year. Some of you participated in that one. So standard making is where we definitely in a country, we really lag in terms of our participation to international standard making. We made that effort of hosting that meeting, and some of us are contributing to standard making, but our contribution till date and now as well is very much less. So we as a community should be more committed to the standard making, and more things should happen. So we invite participation from the industry on standard making part. And that is very, very important part. If you drive us, we will definitely get there into standard making initiatives as well.
So just to briefly touch upon that, from a standards development viewpoint, who are the people participating? Because we already find it challenging on whom to approach, whom we should ask for, whether you contribute to this and you contribute to that. So we have a look at the global counterparts from other countries. And these are the technology architects, solution architects who are designing product solutions, and they are the ones who are spending time in making the standards. So that when standards are out, they already know what's in place, so they design the product accordingly. And India so far has been like a consuming nation. We don't contribute to standard developments, and we are forced to use the standards that are already set. We have no say in that. And we have to spend efforts and time in understanding standards and revising our technologies, our processes. So one important factor, if we were to become autonomous or achieve strategic autonomy at a later point of time, is to actively be part of the standard development process, not just at the ISO level, but in IEEE, Internet Engineering Task Force, ISOC, wherever you find time. Organizations should, I think, invest. Government and organizations should jointly do that. I think it's very important that we actively invest in these initiatives for a longer, having a longer vision in mind.
Yeah, and then last point, and briefly we'll talk about that. It's a very interesting point to talk, but at the same time, there are a lot of deep policy issues involved into that. So there are a lot of platforms that we see, and there are platforms for matchmaking site as well, matrimonial sites. Most of us, some of us would have used that one, but many new generation people have, would be using that one. And they have a lot of concern with respect to the people which are getting registered there. There are some cheating cases which has been found, some fraudulent registration, and leading that to some kind of even harming physically to an individual had been there. And so this particular one platform, but there are multiple other platforms are coming. So for transport, Ola, Uber is coming. For many other platforms which are coming for very different reason. And each sector would have a lot of issues with those platforms. Somebody is now delivering the food to your house, but then food inspector will be there in that particular segment. So these regulators in that particular segment, the policy making bodies, they would be definitely probably influencing the way this aggregator platform, product platform are working. And just first steps towards that is some policy guidance issued by Government of India for the matrimonial site.
So as Vinayak mentioned, there were a lot of concerns, frauds happening, starting with the matrimonial website registration, and people used to give all sort of wrong information, and they would defraud the potential partner. And a lot of females had raised this concern to the Women and Child Development Cell in the government, and they had requested DIT to come up with a policy on, how do we control or have significant requisites in place so that people are aware on who's the person. We have some background information about the person so that frauds can be reduced. One of the important aspect was, identification or making the whatever identity you have in physical space, like your passport, license, PAN card, Aadhaar. So you link it with your identity in the virtual space so that we actually can relate when it is required to identify who the original perpetrator or the who is committing the crime. And so we worked with NASCOM and some of the matrimony companies to formulate some guidelines, give our view on how it should not be overtly prescriptive and it should allow some flexibility. It should not burden the industry to an extent. So DIT had issued this guideline 2 weeks back, and we might see similar things for wallet companies and
for many other companies as well. So,
Yeah.
so this probably concludes what we want to say about the policy matter. There are many other things as well. And offline we can discuss this one, but we just thought to apprise you about what is happening in Delhi and policy matters. But each of these particular area has lot of works that goes in terms of talking to government, writing to them, taking the position, arranging some meetings with the industry, respective industry as well. So we conclude here. So we'll go for the next chapter event and chapter session. So thanks for joining us on this part.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.